Hey, thanks so much for tuning into the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. Today is Soak It Up Saturday, a day that hey, we want you to do this every day, but if you've got a little bit extra time today, soak up His Word. Allow God to read you as you read His Word, and not just you just reading the Word. Apply this to your life. Memorize it, journal it, write out some thoughts. Take a little bit extra time today. You know, we've been focusing on faith and doubt all week and how our doubts can be the catalyst to increase our faith. And I want us to focus today on Hebrews chapter 12, starting in verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. I mean, that has a lot of meat right there in just one verse there. So therefore, first thing we learn in Bible school, when we read the word therefore in Scripture, we have to understand, why is it therefore? Why is it there? And its context is key here. And so this is referring to the previous chapter here. Therefore, since we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, and that is the men and women described in the previous chapter, Hebrews chapter 11, and describe their life and how they allowed their doubts to increase their faith. And it's recorded in Scripture here in Hebrews chapter 11. So because of that, let us be encouraged and let us run the race with endurance, because there are things that will trip us up. There are things that will slow us down. And what are those things? That's our sinful nature. That's the things of this world that will trip us up and that will cause barriers between us and the Lord. And so that's all great. What I love about the next verse is that it gives you the how-to. It gives you clear directions. I don't know if you're somebody who reads directions or not when you need to do something, when you need to build something. I go kind of back and forth depending on what it is. I feel like sometimes, I'm a man, and so I feel like I don't need directions. And then there are other times where it's like, I need directions. I haven't done this before. And so what I love about Scripture here, and this is our life manual. This gives us clear direction. So this is something that I don't neglect. I want to encourage you not to neglect in your life here, because it gives you the how-to. Verse 2 of Hebrews chapter 12. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Or maybe your translation says the author and perfecter of our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Think of all the hostility he endured from the sinful people. Then you won't become weary and give up. And so what I love about this the passage of Scriptures here, and for Soak It Up Saturday, to really soak it up and to ponder and pray over it, is that when we have doubts, when we have insecurities, when we want to give up, it's about perspective. And it's about to understand what Jesus did for you. Jesus died on the cross for you. The payment of your sin. The payment of you falling short. The payment of me falling short. See, we're not good enough. And so, but when we have the perspective on what Jesus did for us, we can have the endurance to keep going. We can have the right perspective, that it's not about an answered prayer or about anything that happens here, but it's about increasing our faith despite the circumstances. I want us to actually go back to Hebrews chapter 11, the very end of it. I want us to, verse 39. Listen to this. All of these people, now talking about the great cloud of witnesses here, all of these people earned a good reputation because of their faith. Yet, none of them received all that God had promised. So I want you to think about that. It wasn't because God gave them everything that they asked for. That's not true. That's not what it's about. See, God's not Santa Claus. God's not somebody that like you just ask for it and say, hey, this is what I need, and I'm not going to love you until I receive it. That's not what faith is. And so what I love about that verse right there is it's because of their faith not because of what they received from the Lord. And so for today, I want you to think about that. What are some things that you've been praying for that you have received from the Lord tangibly that you can go back on? And I think it's important to do that. But what are some things that you're praying for that you haven't received? Increase your faith in those moments, in those circumstances, and go to God with a even if faith, even if mentality, a never give up mentality because of what Jesus did for you. Here's the thing. Jesus paid the price. We get to spend an eternity in heaven. We don't deserve anything else. We don't deserve that. Beyond that, we don't deserve anything else, but we serve such a gracious and generous God. And so can we go to him with that perspective and allow that to increase our faith and our endurance today? Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to tune in tomorrow at 10:15 for our live stream as we continue our series on the 12, or join us in person, and on Monday for another daily dose for spiritual growth.